Welcome to SVG-TV News for Wednesday, April 10th, 2024. I am Rochelle Ortiz with the details. Arrowroot farmers here in SVG are being encouraged to position themselves so when the modern Arrowroot factory at Arrowroot becomes fully operational, which is in about a year's time. Phase 1 of the Arrowroot modernization project is completed and was commemorated with a ceremony on site yesterday. Agriculture Minister Subota Caesar reminded persons that the factory will not only be used to produce Arrowroot starch, but also for other root crops production.
We are doing so knowing that with the technical expertise that we have received internationally, that this factory will also be able to process different lines of starches. I have been advised by Mr. Mahindra Ramdulal and also by Mr. Kempston Kato that on the floor space of this factory, you'll be able to process flour from dasheen, from sweet potatoes, from plantains, and other commodities. So the primary processing that will be taking place in this factory will be the processing of arrowroot starch. However, in this period of advanced technology, they were able to add other lines, which definitely will be a best practice going forward because we are going to have a multifaceted factory.
The Arrowroot factory was removed from Ovia and according to Parliamentary Representative for North Windward, Montgomery Daniel, after the old factory was destroyed by the explosive eruption of last Volcano, they found it not meeting international standards and would have been more costly to repair. Minister Daniel said the new factory at Arrowroot will take less in quantity, however the time to process will be reduced significantly.
You may have the starch being dried 15 days, 18 days, 20 days, depending on the atmospheric condition. And if it goes beyond that 20-day period, of course, this is when you start having trouble with the starch, where bacteria would begin to set in. In such a case, you'd have to reprocess the starch. But in the case of this new factory, after the processing is done, there are no vats. So that the slurry goes straight into dryers, centrifugals, and into dryers, which gives you a finished product in your processing.
The Indian government is co-founding the modern Arrowroot project. Non-resident ambassador to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Shakan Balakcharan, said that the $1.35 million is part of a UNDP funding program that addresses many issues affecting developing countries such as SVG.
It has already supported over 75 projects in 56 countries, addressing challenges ranging from climate resilience to gender equality. The collaboration in this project is more vital as adverse climatic conditions and the global pandemic have significantly impacted farmers' incomes, food security, and employment worldwide. In partnership with UNIDO, India extended a $1.35 million grant to modernize the Arrowroot industry in SVG, benefiting local farmers and enhancing SVG's export potential.
Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who was also at the commemorative ceremony, said that the modern Arrowroot factory will help in reducing SVG's food import bill.
We have to do as much the feeding of ourselves, but we are going to be largely an import-oriented economy in respect of foodstuff. And CARICOM is seeking to cut the food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. But having said that, there are a lot of services which would bring us revenue, foreign exchange, and there are areas, all areas, every single area of life, living, and production would increasingly be about ideas and science and technology, collectively what you may call an empire of the mind.
An update on the UBEC-CRW Food Insecurity Project has been provided to members of the public. The project, which was introduced last year, saw consultations taking place across the country and persons who asked to apply where they can benefit under the project. UBEC-CERT is a component 3 contingent emergency response component of the Unleashing the Blue Economy of the Caribbean. The project is funded by the World Bank with $10 million to be used up before the December 2024 completion date. Deputy Chief Agricultural Officer Colville King said the project is addressing the issue of food security and was designed to address a number of things, including sufficient food production to avoid any problem relating to hunger or malnutrition. Project manager of the UBEC-CRW Food Insecurity Project, Roxanne John, said in relation to livestock, they would have entered into contract to procure 300 animals. She said so far they've selected a quantity of sheep and pigs which will arrive in the country soon. Additionally, in the month of May, goats and rabbits will be selected and these will be bred and distributed to farmers.
There are some components, so it doesn't address all of the sectors, but it addresses livestock and in particular poultry, eggs and meats, broiler meats, but also the ruminants, including rabbits and pigs. On the crop side, it focuses on the fruit and vegetable sector, including citrus, by the way. And on the fisheries side, addresses a number of the issues in fisheries. A lot of the deficiencies that, or the root causes that address it, that creates either food insecurity or the threat related to it. So those are the components of the project, but essentially it's about providing food.
When it comes to poultry, we have done purchase over 23,500 layer-day-old chicks and distributed those as well. And we will have procured over 40,000 broiler eggs. And we have received over 60% of those eggs already. They have been fertilized at the Dumbarton Poultry. And I think Colville could tell us about how the distribution have gone so far with these poultry.
With this project, there's a transparent and objective process by which people are selected. What we want to ensure is that persons receive the support to produce. And we have a process by which persons applied. There are scorecards on which we score the application against. And from that, we're able to select what will be the best applicants to receive the benefits. This is to ensure that after the project is completed, that there's some sustainability. If we don't select well, we're not going to have the best persons receiving that kind of support.
Noting that approximately 10,000 broiler chicks and 25,000 layer chicks have been distributed to more than 70 farmers since the first distribution in December 2023. The Deputy Chief Agricultural Officer said, in addition to the farmers who received batches in December, have produced more than $600,000 worth of broiler meat and eggs, demonstrating the project's dual benefits of enhancing food and nutrition security in SVG and enhancing farmers' livelihood.
Farmers have received substantial benefits. We've done some visits recently, and we are pleased with some of the progress of that distribution. We've also supplied layer chicks, and we've distributed all of those layer chicks. Those chicks are well on their way to producing. One of the issues that householders complain about is that December there's insufficient eggs, and because of that, there's a spike in the price. So we've installed complete new batches of birds with farmers, and we expect in another 2 to 3 months, we're going to have eggs. But that peak production would be in time for the December market. So I'm very happy about that as well. In terms of the sheep, under another project, the pens are being built where the sheep and goats would be permanently housed. The sheep would be bred in a few weeks from now, because what we want to ensure is that before this project ends, we're going to have lambs being produced from the stock that we bought for distribution. So you'd appreciate that that would take a bit of time. We can't just press a button and the lambs come. So we bought pretty young females, and they are at a stage that they can be bred now, and we will be doing that, like I said, in a few weeks. So you can expect in a few months' time, once we have weaners by November or so, we definitely, November, December, we definitely would have lambs ready for that. The calves and the pigs would be received sometime in May. And in June, we are expecting to receive the goats and the rabbits. And again, the same process would obtain.
The SVG Food Insecurity Project seeks to enhance food and nutrition security by increasing the production and productivity of chosen commodities, particularly among business-oriented small farmers and fishers. The initiative aims to establish a fast, cost-effective and sustainable food production system here in SVG. Vincentian geologist with the UWI Seismic Research Center, Professor Richard Robinson, said there is ongoing research being carried out on La Soufrière volcano as they advance their preparations for the next eruption. In an interview with SVG-TV News, Professor Robinson said that the research will be able to say when, how, and the magnitude of eruption which is likely.
One of the things that we'll be constantly trying to do is to try to better understand the kinds of eruption that you have at Soufrière, and to understand perhaps more so how we could detect when the eruption starts, whether it's going to be a large event or a small event, whether it's going to be an event of the size of what we had, or whether it's going to be something bigger. That's kind of one of the critical things that we find as important now. We have been able to, in the past, detect prior to an eruption that the volcano is going to erupt. What we want to do now is better understand the system such that when we see the early signals, we could detect what direction, what kind of size perhaps, try to estimate the kind of magnitude of events that you could have. And also we're looking at the older eruptions, the older eruptive period from Soufrière, where you used to have even bigger events than sort of we have had during the times that people have been on the island. So we want to understand the older history of the volcano to see if, what kinds of eruptions you had, and if in going forward we could detect that is going to be going in that direction or is going to continue in this pattern.
Additional equipment has already been installed with at least 7 seismic stations operational, which is being monitored locally and by the UWI Seismic Research Center. Professor Robinson noted that capacity building for local personnel is ongoing with another Vincentian geologist on board.
There is currently a geologist employed at the Soufrière Monitoring Unit, Lianka, who came on board soon, well, more or less during the crisis stage of the eruption. She had just done a geology degree at Mona. I believe there would be plans in place to get her to have additional training. In addition, there are one or two, there have always been one or two geologists out there Vincentian geologists who may be potentially, incorporated into the system. But in terms of currently, there is someone already on staff at NEMO who is working as part of the Soufrière Monitoring Unit, who I anticipate they would remain there as long as I think, I guess, and as long as she wants to, I suspect. And I think the intention is to ensure that people like her and others who may come along are trained up, and so that you would have, as you said, you would have a local group of persons. Of course, the Seismic Research Center is not going anywhere. We'll always be there, whether it's me or someone else. Not necessarily me, it certainly wouldn't be probably for the next time. But there will be people at UE Seismic Research Center who will be providing support to the monitoring network locally, and ensuring that, we have a set of people both on island and regionally we'll be keeping a close eye on the volcano.
The third anniversary of the last explosive eruption of Lasofre volcano was observed here on Tuesday, April 9th. In other local news now, we hear that Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves is advising members of the public not to allow any and anyone to send you a barrel or box, and to be careful who you receive these items from, even if it's on behalf of someone else. The Prime Minister issues the warning on radio today while noting that measures are being implemented at the containers port to enhance the detection of illegal items.
And if you don't know where somebody going to put in a box or barrel, don't let them send it for you. And when somebody asks you, Johnny P, that Mavis or Jonathan, send in a barrel for them or a box, but they would be in the country, they could put it in your name, Johnny P, and you clear it for them. I'm advising you to be careful, Johnny P. I will just want to tell you that we have operational down at Camden Park Port, where 90% of the stuff come in the containers. We have a sophisticated scanner established there now, and we can see the guns coming in, We can see where you're bringing in, even before the box is open, or the barrel, because some people try to conceal some things in some very clever ways, which a manual search may not pick up. And we're in the process of installing one in Kingston. I'm making a general point. I ain't calling anybody name in relation to anything. But you know that I've given out this piece of advice because I know. Down to yesterday, what was discovered. And some innocent people could get into trouble by not being careful. The world is a different world now, Johnny P. Yeah. And we live in a dangerous neighborhood.
Eyewitness News reported this afternoon that it was reliably informed that the police have launched an investigation after they intercepted over 2,000 rounds of ammunition, a firearm, and firearm cleaning kits at the Camden Park container port. We will bring you more on this story as further information comes to hand. We hear that with calls for the age of consent in reference to sexual intercourse to be raised above 15 as it currently stands. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who was on radio today, was asked about consideration in raising the age of consent, said there has to be a balance.
There are persons who say it shouldn't be less than 18. Well, I don't know if that is the sense of the bulk of the people in the country or a smaller group of people. Some even say it should be 21. You have to have an age where persons are, which is a balance between where somebody is of an age might be able to consent properly and where they may not be able to consent. You also have to bear in mind that the current law gives a young man, because the law is sensitive that in a practical world, young men and young women, teenagers, will have sex. I'm not making a moral point as whether they should have sex. Right. Johnny P, I'm living in the world that they do.
The Prime Minister noted that there may be a stronger case of putting back the age of consent to 16 as it was in the 1960s than to 18.
So this is a matter on which I'd like to hear discussions and more conversations. But I give you as a sensible and wise and mature lawmaker, the balance which you have to be. So clearly, somebody with the law makes a distinction between 13 to 15, that child cannot give you consent, and which carries, before last week when we changed the law, carried a lesser penalty than maximum of life. Under 13 is a maximum. If you have sex with a child under 13, is a maximum of life. Because the person doesn't get life. Right. they have all these discounts which they give. I would expect a person will get something near to what is a natural lifespan if it included extraordinary violence and so on and so forth. But the judges, they have their own guidelines within which, when they take the laws as they are made by the parliament. So they hardly anybody gets the maximum. Mm-hmm. That's how the judges fashion their guidelines. That's why sometimes you have to make the maximum higher. If you think, as we have done, for instance, recently for a series of sexual offenses. So it could be that you can go, there may be a case for that, for carrying it to 16.
Dr. Gonzalez said the challenge in dealing with sexual offences involving children under 15 is the problem of reportage.
People don't report it many times. Mm-hmm. Even when a child gets pregnant, and under the law, under the Child Care and Adoption Act, the doctor who deals with the child and other professionals interface with the child have an obligation to report it to the police. Which report it to the police, and the child doesn't say anything, her mother doesn't say anything. Mm. So you can carry the age a little higher for consent, but some of those issues remain. Mm. And you can be pretty sure that if they are now at persons below the age of 15, that how those are going to be even more difficult as you get higher, if you carry the age of consent high.
Yeah, ticklish. A quick follow-up.
Balance, Johnny P. But I'm listening to the discussion which is going on. Yeah. But if you can't have the discussions in any demagogic or opportunistic manner. You have to have it in a sensible and balanced way. I'm not dealing now with morality. Everybody tells their sons and daughters, do not have premarital sex.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I think most people will say that throughout human civilization, that parental advice, certainly in the modern period, has not been very much observed by the children.
Prime Minister Gonzalez, who is also the parliamentary representative for North Central Windward, deemed the killing of 2 men in Park Hill in his constituency a wicked act. SVG-TV News asked the Prime Minister about the matter on the sidelines of a ceremony in Arundel yesterday for the completion of the phase 1 of the Arrowroot modernization project.
I don't want to comment on the cases because the police investigating. And that's the business of the police to make the comments. But I was in touch with the family, with each of the families. I know each of the families very well. I spoke to them yesterday after I heard about the incidents, and this morning another of the families called me about something and I spoke to them too. It's a terrible thing. The police are doing their job, and I'm hopeful that they will find the culprit or culprits who did this very wicked act.
The partially burnt male bodies in Park Hill were discovered on Monday, 2 weeks after another person in the neighboring community of South Rivers was killed. The Prime Minister said it is out of character for such killings to take place in his constituency.
The people of Park Hill, the people of South Rivers, Connery, generally in the whole constituency, are peaceful people. What has happened is completely out of character in the constituency. You have one or two evil people, and this is an act of monumental evil. And I'm waiting the outcome. I have been given certain information, but I don't want to talk about it. But this time is just having solidarity with the families. And naturally they will be very upset and saddened. And I'm there for them.
3 persons were apprehended in relation to the incident. However, SVG-TV News understands that a suspect has been charged with the offense of murder and is expected to appear in court tomorrow.